Welcome to Espiritu Coffee Chats, the podcast where we blend wellness, spirituality, and business to help you live with intention and balance.
We're your hosts, Valerie and Arlene, two Latina entrepreneurs here to guide and grow with you.
Welcome to today's episode of Espiritu Coffee Chats, and we're super excited because we have one of our very good friends here. So I'm just going to jump straight into the intro. And today's guest is someone who we're really honored to call a friend, a biz bestie, and a true joy ambassador. India is the founder of the Joy Collaborative, a consulting practice rooted in the belief that joy is not a luxury, but it is an essential. She helps individuals and organizations reimagine their relationship to work, guiding them to build lives, brands, and workplaces that feel as good as they look on paper. With deep expertise in entrepreneurship, mindfulness, company culture, and equity, India brings a unique lens to leadership and creative living. Whether she's helping teams design more joyful work environments or encouraging clients to take what she calls joy breaks, India's work reminds us that we deserve to thrive and not just survive. So let's get ready to dive into a beautiful conversation about alignment, boundaries, and the courage that it takes to build a life that actually feels good to live. So welcome, India.
Welcome, India. Woo woo. The horns are blazing.
Thank you so much for having me. And, I love that little intro. I was listening to it and I was like, damn, I sound good.
Okay.
So really quick question, because we are Espiritu Coffee Chats, and Espiritu, it basically means spiritual or spirits in Spanish, and then coffee, of course. So we want to know, how do you start out your morning? Are you a coffee drinker, a tea drinker, matcha drinker? Are you a hot coffee or a cold coffee? Or tell us what was in your cup this morning.
Water.
Water. Okay, pretty basic. All right.
Yes. Listen, I am very much the basic B when it comes to drinks. I want my water. I want it iced in my good old water bottle that goes everywhere with me. And that is how I typically start my mornings. And I'm not a big coffee person, which you all know, and Valerie, we've talked about, but I have had some of your coffee and it was delicious.
Fun. I love it.
I remember that was a fun time.
I was shocked, like genuinely shocked that I liked it. So
Yeah.
kudos to you.
Yay, I make good coffee.
Okay. Okay, so since we are all about joy, what is one thing that you are looking forward to this week that is going to bring you joy and excitement?
Ooh, boy. I have a number of meetings this week with people, like wonderful folks that I've been wanting to connect with for a while, and I haven't had a chance to because I've been in kind of the hard working, go 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 season of my life. And now that things are slowing down, I can finally make room for connection. So I'm really looking forward to just meeting up with some folks, having some lemonade, being in the sun. The weather's nice this week, and really slowing down. So a big change of pace from how things have been.
Oh, nice. I love that. So collaboration is what, and your ice cold lemonade.
Yes, some connection and lemonade.
Connection and lemonade. Ooh, I love that. Well, when you get lemons, you got to make lemonades. Let's dive into one of the things that we really wanted to bring you on as one of our first Biz Besties guests is that Valerie and I really value the fact that you really want to bring joy into the workspace. And I'm all about bringing spirituality into all the things. Valerie's about bringing her joy through coffee and connection, and you're all about joy with just bringing it to the workplace. And I think that 2020 really gave us all an idea of how miserable we all could be and have been, or we're about to be. So I want you to walk us into the journey of, how did all of this cultivate? How did you become the joy ambassador?
Oh man, it's such a long story of just becoming. And I think that the story is not even over. It's still happening. It's still unfolding as I just attempt to live out my values in the everyday. And my values, clash with societal expectations of how we need to show up. But I would say So you all mentioned that I've been doing consulting for a while. I did like racial justice, like racial equity, DEI consulting for a number of years. Like that has kind of been my background. And I think in that, and even in the work that I've done in higher ed, I'm an educator as well, teach ethnic studies, critical gender studies. There's always this like pressure that of like to be on and to always be available and to do, especially because I often work positions that didn't hold traditional hours. So it's hard when you do that or when you're a business owner to create boundaries for yourself, especially as a consultant or if you have clients that, you know, don't necessarily respect boundaries or reach out to you whenever and their emergencies like they expect their emergencies to become your emergencies. It's just like
Right.
I'm sure you all know. And so I spent a number of years really kind of succumbing to this pressure of overwork and trying to keep up like everyone else and trying to survive and make ends meet, especially like just in positions that weren't nourishing me. And I was just like caught up in that culture of urgency. And even when my previous consulting companies, I co-founded a consulting company called Moxie Consultancy Collective with two other folks. And even in that, when we were doing that, and I was like working for myself, I found these moments where we would be operating in the same way, right? And we would have to like pause and check ourselves. But I carried that mindset with me of just like powering through and that became my default. And so life started feeling like something that was like happening to me instead of something that um like that I controlled or that I was intentionally shaping. And so I was exhausted and I was resentful. And then, 2019, 2020, there's all of these like police shootings and the world is in an uproar and Black Lives Matter is at its height. And then like COVID starts creeping in. And it's like thing after thing. And we're getting, called by clients that are just like, hey, help me not be like a fucked up organization. Could you just like tell me what I need to do? And in that work, especially when it comes to like racial equity work, it requires that I like do so much inner work in order to be able to show up and create a container to hold other people's stuff. And at that time, my tank was depleted. And I was like frustrated and annoyed and like starting to just feel resentful. And so I have this friend that will always say that she was making love her highest teacher in life and like what would it look like to make love her highest teacher? And I always thought that was such a profound question. And I started asking myself, well, what would it look like for me to let joy lead me? What would it look like for joy to be my highest teacher? What would I have to do different? What would I have to let go of? Just just how would my life transform? And at the moment when I started to question that, I think I was like burnt out. Like I was at the end of my rope, like personally, professionally, I needed to exist in a different way. Like I just did not see how continuing in the way that I had been would be sustaining. And our world was shifting, right? Like COVID is happening. We're like at a heightened, like our nervous systems are all dysregulated. It was just a hot mess. So surprisingly, what that first meant for me is I created a luxury picnic company, which y'all know about. I don't know why my brain like what my Virgo brain was telling me. I'm like, I need joy. I need to like not be burnt out. And my Virgo brain is like, of course I have the answer. Let's add another business to your plate.
Another business that looks like joy, but you're doing all the work for it. You were providing joy in that business as well, but
Yes.
it's like more work for you. And yeah, it didn't really give you that break that you needed.
Was thinking. I mean, at that point, it was so drastically different than anything that I was doing. I didn't have to use my brain in the same way. I didn't have to hold anybody else's like stuff So I could see how it felt refreshing, but it was not the actual change of course that I needed. But what came out of that experience is I went into it thinking, what does it look like for me to build a business rooted in joy from the beginning? And asking myself those same questions. And that became really interesting and started to lay the groundwork for the Joy Collaborative. And one of the things that came out of that is like my like firm belief in a joyful no. Because as business owners, if we are, taking care of ourselves, employees, if we have any, our families, it's a lot of pressure to just say yes all the time because we need to make ends meet and we need money. You know what I'm saying? Like we need to keep the lights on. And with the luxury picnic business, I realized that I just don't like doing certain things and I don't want to do it. And why do I have to? Like, no one is my boss. Why
Mhm.
do I have to do this thing? And I realized if the more that I could say no to the things that aren't aligned to me, the more space that I create for myself to have a joyful yes. So I started getting really good at joyful no's. Like, for example, we're here in San Diego, so if folks aren't in San Diego listening to us, then you may not understand how the beach is wonderful and also it's not. Like it's not. Like it's like it's also a
I feel you.
hassle.
Yeah, yeah, I feel you on that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I realized early on, like, oh, I don't want to do picnics on the beach in the sand. Listen, I have this video of me like pulling this wagon in the sand. I was like, never again. Never again. So while all the other like luxury picnic companies are like, yeah, we're gonna set up this beautiful thing on the beach. I'm like, oh no, we don't do that. However, you know what I'm saying? And that was one of the places that I just like fully stood in a joyful business decision that didn't on paper make sense,
Mhm.
but it changed so much for me and gave me the confidence to start really thinking about what it looks like to build joy into my business. And so, time goes on, I'm doing this, and I start to realize like, oh, adding another business probably is not also the most joyous thing I could do. And what does it look like for me to like weed my life and like let go of things? Because ultimately my definition of success, which has been changing over the years, is ease. Success to me means ease. Running multiple businesses in that way, and I was like finishing up a doctorate and going through IVF, like that's not joyful. So eventually I joyfully sold that picnic business for a profit. Wonderful. And I realized that I wanted to also do approach consulting in a different way. So me and my co-founders closed Moxie, which was so hard. Like, and I think like you all were kind of witnessing some of that, but also just such a like blessing. And I'm so grateful for it and free myself up for me to focus solely on approaching the work the way I wanted to. And that is how the Joy Collaborative came to be. Because I realized so many of the clients that I was working with were asking the wrong questions and starting in the wrong place. And for me, it's like, what is the lowest common denominator? And it's that we deserve to show up at a workplace that nourishes us, that isn't soul sucking, right? Like doesn't suck the soul and life out of us. And that's not a big ask. But we've been kind of conditioned to believe that work is there for us to get a paycheck to support the living that we do outside of it. And that it doesn't matter if we're unhappy or, if it is horrible and toxic, because like that's not what truly matters. But we're going to spend 1/3 of our life at minimum working. And even more so, I think we're kind of inching towards half of our life because people are retiring later. It's more expensive to live, so you have to keep working. So if we're going to spend half of our life working, it needs to be something that gives us joy. I like fully believe in that. And I fully believe that if we start with the question of how do we create joyful cultures for our employees or for ourselves, like if we're solo entrepreneurs, right? Because sometimes we forget about that. We're like, we just need to wear all the hats and it's just a hustle and we just accept it as if that's how it has to be. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so if we just reimagine joy, I mean, reimagine work as something that can be a source of joy, I think it transforms our entire lives. Because, like if we have a bad day at work, it seeps into other areas of our life. And so, yeah, I'm on a mission to help people boldly chase and choose joy in their life. Choose joy now.
Yes, I love that. It also, as you were speaking, reminded me because I'm going to throw in your human design if you don't mind, but you're a
Yes, do
manifestor.
it.
And manifestors are trailblazers. They're here to lead a path that is their own path, their own, whatever it is that they choose to believe in or that they want to lead. Like you're not meant to be the worker bee. You're not meant here to sit in the background. You're meant to lead and pave the way. And also, manifestors don't have their sacral defined, so they don't have this abundance of energy all the time.
Mm.
So it's almost like you know what that feels like, even in your own body, to feel like, dude, I only have enough for this and I don't have enough for all of that.
Yeah.
And I love that you are kind of leading this movement, but it's a movement that makes people reassess their work and work, like you said, it's a big part of our life. I mean, we're gone. Some people work 12-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts, like part-time, like wherever it is. But one of the things that you caught my attention on was I used to work at Lululemon, and I felt like they had a lot of like DEI stuff, and that was actually holding them accountable to make their employees satisfied, for us to have a voice, for us to do exercises that were about bonding and caring. So it's like no matter what job you have, even if it's like, you're a college student and you're working at Lululemon, or you have your own business and you're a CEO person, right? Like you still have, like, that joy can still be attainable no matter what level you're at, no matter what income you're making. But I think another thing that caught my attention was when you said weeding. Weeding things out. Like if you think about a garden, like you have to weed things out in order for it to grow. If not, those weeds take up nutrients from the soil, and whatever it is that you are actually trying to grow, whether it's a flower or a vegetable or a succulent, it's not going to get the most nutrition or the most of that it needs to like sprout and grow and bloom. So when you said weeding, I was like, oh, I'm ready to weed. I'm so ready to weed. And I always think about, like, when I think about, the is it Mary Kondo, the one who's like, you got to edit your closet and does this bring you
Marie
joy?
Kondo, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So she probably was a Virgo. She has to be. But it just reminds me of like, yeah, like who do you need to weed from your life, or what system do you need to bring in? Like all these things, maybe it's editing, weeding out your break times and having more break times, and like little things that you can just add. They don't have to be major changes, but the little changes over time is what literally helps cultivate like a nourishing environment for you. And when you get home, you're excited to be home, you feel fulfilled. And it's hard, I think, too. You bring up a good point. Like, people can't afford things every day, so they just take a
Mhm.
job that pays them well. But it's
Yeah.
also the responsibility of the employer to provide a safe space, a space that feels nurturing, a space where they want to keep their employee too. The more you can keep your employee, the more you feel fulfilled, because you're not always having to hire all these different people.
Yes.
So I definitely feel that. And going back to you as a manifester, like you are here to use your voice. And so I totally see this being like you, the next Oprah.
I accept that. Okay. I claim
Yes,
that. Universe, you heard her. Yeah.
yes, you hear her living in alignment. I love that. Valerie, is there anything that you want to add? Any questions?
I think you hit it like straight on the head. Like as a coffee shop owner, like we have baristas that we hire, and like the culture of the space is so important. And there's so many other people who are like, oh, we can't keep good talent or we just can't find good baristas. And we've been very blessed to not have that problem. But I do think it goes back to being joyful. Like we try super hard, incredibly hard to create the culture where people feel seen, where they feel valued, where they're able to share their input. Like, listen, at the end of the day, the baristas are my boss. I'm not their boss. They tell me what
Yes.
they need and I do it. So
Hmm.
I think it's just really important. Like some of the best places that I've worked in the past all had really great cultures. So yeah, it's just, especially in this day and age where we're like part virtual, part in real life, like we have global employees all over the world. Like it's really important for us to retain talent and something so simple as implementing joyful things into the workplace saves businesses tons of money, which is why they should hire India all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm here. I'm like available for retreats and, team builders and stuff.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
it. So you talked a little bit about like the what brought you into the Joy Collaborative and a little bit about the mission. Can you talk a little bit specifically about how you came up with the name and then also because your work kind of spans, it goes beyond just the company, your job, right? It goes into at home living, your personal alignment. We go back
Mhm.
to that equity aspect. So how do you bring also those into one joyful thing?
So so after I finished Moxie and I realized like this is the direction I wanted to go in. I just wanted to get started. Like I just jumped in. I think I was doing the work under my name, like India Pierce Consulting or something. And the more that I got comfortable with this direction that I was going, realized like, oh, I need a name that fits. And of course joy had to be in it. But at the core of it, for me, joy is about community. And joy absolutely is something that I can cultivate for myself, that I do on my own. But it requires all of these things like working together in collaboration to support my joyful life. And so that is kind of where the name came from, like the Joy Collaborative, like recognizing that joy in so many different ways, in whatever way, and with in that with my goodness, in so many different ways, and within many different contexts requires collaborative work. And so if that's at home, like between you and your partner, if that's at work, between coworkers and teams and supervisors or folks at different levels, we come together to cultivate joy for ourselves and for the folks that are around us. So that's where the name came from. And shout out to my wife because I was like thinking through lots of different things. And she's like, yeah, no, this is it. This is it. This is the one. And I was like, okay. But it's right. It was the right fit.
I love that.
Um, to the point that you were making about just like joy in all aspects of our life, that has been really important to me because like I said before, what happens at work doesn't stay at work. We spend the majority of our day at work, but we bring that home with us. Just like what happens at home. Like if we had a fight with our partner before we left, or like the dog shitted all over the floor and then you had to hurry up and clean that so you was late. Like it's all connected, right? Like it is this cycle that feeds into one another. And so what happens at home is important. It impacts our work. And what happens at work is important. It impacts our home. And so we can't have joyful living without having a joyful work, and vice versa. We can't have joyful work without having a joyful life that supports it. So I want us to think about joy in a very kind of multifaceted way. And yes, joy, when we talk about the workplace, there is a responsibility of like supervisors and like leadership to help create the infrastructure that allows for folks to experience joy at work. But we are also responsible for our own joy and creating pockets of joy for ourselves. So when we look at it in that way, it it constantly pulls us into it. Arlene, as you were mentioning, like how it makes us kind of stop and think about ourselves and what are the practices that we have and what are we doing to be intentional? Because what I was hearing from you, Valerie, when talking about your staff is that you're intentional in the culture that you create, right? That takes thought. Like you're trying hard, but you're being intentional about what you do. And so we can be intentional about joy in every aspect of our lives.
What is something where people, because you have this, I love this too, it's a joy break. So that is something where you also want to, you kind of really advocate for people to take joy breaks throughout their day, throughout their work day or whatever. And that's also something that I feel like you work with companies to help them implement this joy break. So give us like a couple examples of what this joy break looks like. What does it mean? How can we cultivate it into our everyday for all of our listeners listening to this? Whether they have their own business or they work for somebody else or they're even just a mom, because moms get overlooked too. You know, you got a daughter that there's somebody watching her right now and that person needs a break.
Yes, I know, right? It really does. So, okay, let me back up by saying for me, joy breaks are like radical acts of self-love. They are practices of freedom. They are not to be like, like we're not just like randomly doing shit. Like we are cultivating the lives that we deserve, like one break at a time. So when people hear me talk about joy breaks, they're like, "Oh my God, that's so cute." I'm like, "No, this is how we get free. Like this is serious business." So a joy break is an intentional break that you take in your day to do something that makes you happy, that brings you joy. And I define it in the kind of most vastest way possible so that folks realize that joy can happen in a number of ways. But at the kind of core of this concept is challenging the like our society's obsession with being on, with being productive, with being available and like posting all the damn time and like answering all the emails and texting back right away. All of these things that tells us that our labor is where we find our value. And that's not true. And the joy break is really this way of helping people to realize that they're meant for more than work, that they are worth more than their labor, and that we deserve rest, period. And it doesn't have to come after something, right? Because I know for me, like early on in my journey, joy was something that came after I finished that project, or, in the summers when the school year was over, or on Friday. Like it was this thing that we're constantly like waiting for, that I was waiting for. And I had to shift my mindset. Like, no, joy is something I deserve no matter what I do. If I do nothing on my to-do list, I still deserve joy. And it's something I deserve every single day. Joy breaks can look like anything. Joy breaks can look like, for folks who are like working at a place, maybe it is switching a meeting from like being in your office to taking it outside and having a walking meeting so you can be out in nature. Right? It's so much connected to who we are as a person. And so it's going to look different for everyone. Taking a walking meeting is not my idea of a joy break. It sounds like hot and sweaty, and I'm trying to keep up with stuff while I walk. Like that's not my idea of joy. But for someone else who like enjoys being outside, like maybe like that is the shift, that's the break that they need. It could be a picnic at the park or, taking a nap. Right? Catching up with friends. Joy can be found in the simplest of pleasures and the smallest gestures of life, just like it can be found in, taking that girl's trip or having a day at the spa. I think a lot about how our like capitalist society tells us that things have to look a certain way, right? So the self-care industry is a multi-trillion dollar industry that makes you feel like you, in order for you to rest or take a break or vacation, it needs to be glamorous. It needs to be, like Instagram worthy, and you got to go somewhere exotic and all this kind of stuff. And yes, I'm here for that, but also I love sitting on my couch and like binging TV. And that is such a beautiful joy break for me where I just get to turn off my mind and just, like delve deep into somebody else's shit that has nothing to do with me, right? Like and that is, um, that is important, right? So slowing down our work in order to kind of turn up our joy.
I love that. You reminded me of this weekend. Or last weekend, I hosted a retreat in Sedona and I made food for everybody for 4 days on top of hosting. And one of the things where, I had that ambition, right? Like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get all the things done and multitask. And at the same time, I was like, but I want to be happy, and I want people to know that I'm making their food with joy in it and happiness in it. So I would just put on, it reminded me when I go to a Mexican restaurant or any restaurant, to be honest, in Southern California, because guess who's cooking in the back? A bunch of Mexicans. And if you walk up close enough, you could hear there's music playing. And I was like, ooh, I'm gonna pretend that I am one of the cooks in one of these high-end restaurants, and I'm gonna put on my favorite playlist from childhood. And just that mental switch really
Yeah.
made me feel like I got so nostalgic, in that moment. And I also was like dancing, and I had one of the facilitators, helping me cook, and then all of a sudden it just becomes contagious. Then people are sitting at the counter,
Yes.
they're like, so what are you cooking, Arlene? And then all of a sudden all these conversations are starting, and it's just that simple act of like, okay, I know I have to get things done. I know I need this drive and this ambition to have a successful meal every day. But at the same time, even though there's labor, I could put in love. And even though there's, labor, I love myself enough to give myself something in this moment. And that for me was music. So I felt like, there's moments in time where, people are, can't have that luxury of just, oh, I'm gonna go take a nap or whatever, right? Like there's also this luxury of you can create it. A luxury is your own and however you want it to be. So even bringing my little boombox out, putting it on my playlist.
Not the boombox.
Yeah, I mean, now they're like this little.
Yeah. But what you're saying is like spot on. It's like, how do we infuse joy into our life, into the harsh moments? Because sometimes people feel like joy is this thing that exists in isolation, but it doesn't. Joy exists right alongside pain, alongside suffering, sorrow, hardship. It's there. It isn't something that just disappears. We can choose to be intentional in tapping into it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. So sounds like a lot of you working with people on their mindset.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because that wasn't even what I thought I would be doing into like when I first went into this. I didn't realize how much of a mindset shift it required.
Mhm.
Because when people talk about joy, or in the previous work I used to do, and I still talk about it a little bit, I would think a lot about how do we create cultures of care. And when we start using words like that, people are like, "Ooh, this is a little too like woo-woo for me." Like, I don't, what exactly does that mean? Because you make it concrete. People don't are just like not conditioned to think about it in as part of our everyday, and have no clue what it looks like to engage with it in these places that like a workplace. So definitely it's been a lot of helping people to reimagine their relationship to work, and not even starting with work. Arlene, we co-hosted the Big Vision Energy
Mhm.
event what, ooh, a couple of years ago.
Like couple, it was
And
last year, girl.
it wasn't last year. Oh
Last
my
year
God.
feels like 5 years ago, but it was, I
Oh
think, at
my
the start of
goodness.
it was at the start of 2024 for sure.
Listen, this is the issue with having a toddler. Everything is skewed. I have no sense of time. Oh my gosh. But one of the things that we did, and Valerie, you were there, is we start with the big vision that we have for our life. Like, what is that big, joyful vision? And when we can start there and people start to think about how they actually want to show up in life, how they want to show up with their friends, for themselves, and then how does work fit into that? Is it helping? Is it feeding this vision that you have? Is it pulling you further from this vision? Then I think that it opens folks up to be able to think about joy at work. So, in like all of my workshops, it always starts at that kind of interpersonal, like at the individual level, then looking at it interpersonally, like what is our relationships before we move to talking about work. Like people first have to get to the point where they know what joy means to them. Because so often we get caught up in what we don't want, and we can easily be like, oh, I do not want this, this, and that. And then when someone's like, well, what do you want? You're like, like, oh, girl, I don't know. Nobody's ever asked me what I want before. And
Right.
so it's like getting to that place of, well, actually, what does joy even mean for you? Like, what brings you joy? What lights you up? When was the last time you felt this way? And having folks kind of navigate all of the stuff that comes up for that. Because for some people, it's like, oh, it's this, like they know, like they're clued in. And for other people, life is hard sometimes. And like, I don't know. And so, really moving through whatever comes up there to get to this like baseline that we have around joy and understanding how it moves and shows up in our life or how we want it to show up in our life, to then talk about, well, here are all these like external things, work being one of them. And how do we, what does it look like to make this another source of joy in our life?
Yeah, I definitely do see that. I was gonna ask you, for those who want to seek joy and they're like, hey, oh yeah, I feel this. I feel empowered now.
Yes.
But now what, right? So it's like it's almost people could get scared to make that big shift, and maybe that shift does look like you. I mean, that I just had to do it in my business. I pivoted my whole brand this past year. And Valerie did the same thing. You've done the same thing. And you've literally had to have that fear of like, I got to let this go because it is not bringing me joy. But I also have the trust and have the courage and the process that if I let this go, I am going to be attaining something without even knowing, like, it's like almost walking blind and just using your own intuition. And I think
Yeah.
that's what usually scares people away from maybe leaving that job, or maybe even it's just changing a position in your job, like the role that you're doing isn't even the best role, maybe you need to be in another role, right? So I think it's like people get scared of advocating for themselves, but they also get scared of letting go,
Mhm.
and staying in the discomfort because that seems safer.
Oh my goodness. I remember having a therapist a long time ago say, every situation that we're in serves us some way. So even the situations that are toxic, that literally from every view is not serving us, we stay in those situations because it's giving us something. And until we can figure out what it is that this thing is giving us, then we're not going to be able to kind of move and walk away from it. And so that's something I've carried with me when it comes to like leaving people and leaving places behind. So I think that, there are kind of two types of people. There'll be there's the person that's like, hell yeah, as you said, who are like, say less. Listen, baby, I'm about to take a joy break right now. Right.
Yeah.
And then like they don't need the convincing. And then there are folks who have to kind of, I don't want to say like learn the hard way, but they have to get to the point where they realize, like I did, that if I stay on this path, it's not sustainable and I need to do something. And then those folks will act. But it doesn't need to be big changes, as you said. It can be small things. Like, right, I think that first question that folks have to ask themselves is like, what actually brings me joy? What does it look like for me to be in a state of joy? Because you can't figure out how to cultivate joy in other aspects of your life if you don't even know what brings you joy. Like if you, for example, maybe like you feel the most joy when you're around people and you get to feed off of folks' energy, but you work from home, like you work remotely and you it's just you and your cat, right? And so maybe like recognizing that, like, oh my gosh, I have not even set up to be able to experience joy in a way that, feeds me. And so you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna start going to a coffee shop to work, or I'm gonna get a membership at some co-working place, right? Like a small shift. And maybe it's not even work related too. Because sometimes I think to the point that you were making, Arlene, like it is hard for people who don't have positional power to work up the courage to advocate for themselves at work, to make shifts in their workplace. And if that's like you and you're listening to this or watching this, then okay, we'll work up to that step. What can you do in your personal life to get practice at prioritizing joy for you? I think like we could start there. So there are multiple ways to kind of approach it. And maybe it's, you're going to start having a me day once a month. And with that me day, you're like kids with somebody else, or, whatever caretaking responsibilities you have. If it's the cat, the goldfish, the dog, like somebody else is doing it. And it's just like a day in which you're just pouring into yourself. Maybe that is like the practice that you start. I love a good me day. I'm having a whole week of me in a couple of weeks. So it's like, yes, like there are ways that we can take kind of baby steps to pour into ourselves.
Right. And in my work that I do, sometimes I do interior design for people's homes, and all I've been getting lately is women to help them do their offices, and that's been something like where I walk in and I'm like, whoa, and then when I'm done, I'm like, hell yeah, and their whole energy just changes, and it's just even putting the intention into you, like where you sit at your desk, like there's little small things, like yeah, like you said, you can do. And I've noticed, even though, they're just a room in their home, but that's brought them this so much. It's almost like cleared away energy in a sense, and they have this sense of new renewal, and they have ownership over their space, even though they don't work at an office, they work from home. So there are a lot of things, like you said, that people just, it's like a way of training your brain to think outside of the box, and also another way of you saying, like, you deserve to have a space that looks and reflects just like you, or whatever that looks like, having a cup of coffee in the middle of the day, and it be you're taking your time making this ritual in the afternoon. My husband does that. He has his little coffee station at work, and in the middle of the day he makes his little espresso, and he has his little tinkering around stuff, and he sits there in his little desk for like 5 minutes and sips on his espresso. And it's like that makes him so excited. And even the kind of espresso that he drinks, he's like, versus another one, that gets him excited. It's like just those small little tasks that don't need to be big things. And maybe that's a Virgo thing. Valerie, I don't know if you want to chime in on this, but Valerie's a Pisces. But we got two Virgos between me and India. And like the little small things sometimes can like make the big difference in your day with ritual.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I agree with the food. I'm a huge foodie, like bevy kind of girl for sure. The ritual of making coffee. Like this morning, I made my little decaf coffee, and we had a Pokemon trading card event at the shop this weekend. So we did like Pokemon inspired drinks, and it was just so fun because it's like nostalgic, the flavors are good, like it's a way for you to kind of like tap back into that like inner child and also like take that moment for yourself. Like this morning I had some marshmallows and I put matcha marshmallows in there that I was like,
Ooh.
it's so good. And I used the strawberry rose oat milk that we made. I'm like all bougie with it. And I don't need to be this bougie with the coffee. Just give me espresso and milk. I'm done. But
That
today,
sounds delicious.
that's good. We'll have a little coffee thing for you guys. We'll do a coffee alternative for India.
Okay.
You
You know,
drink.
I hearing you all talk, now I have a question for you. Because you both kind of talked about your work. And so, and I've talked a little bit about like the joyful and how you have to figure out what it looks like to build a business with joy. And so what does that look like for you all? What has that looked like? What are you joyfully saying no to in order to say yes to in your business? Yeah, I want to hear from both of y'all. Oh my God, did I become the interviewer?
Right, right, right.
It's over.
Valerie, you want to go?
Yeah, I feel like this is just so at the forefront of my mind right now because like Surge Coffee, we're going through such a huge transition. Like it's been 1 year about of being in our brick and mortar in downtown El Cajon. Yeah, it was really fun. We did like so many things. When I look back at it, I'm like, damn, we really did a lot and we pushed really freaking hard. I was exhausted all the time. There was no joy breaks.
Right.
And now we're getting ready to close the coffee shop and go back to focusing on mobile. And at first, it was really hard to say no. I think just like how you said with Moxie, like it was really hard to close it down. And like
Mhm.
it's just not something that I guess I was ready to accept because I wanted it to work so badly. And it was really hard to get it going and people were not coming in. We just didn't have the foot traffic. Everything just seemed extra hard work for whatever reason. And then finally we're like, you know what, this just is not working. Like we're not excited to come to this space anymore because it's not working for us. It's draining our resources, which is affecting our daily lives, like just all of it together in one compounding. And finally we said no. And then it was like the sun came out. I was like, oh, we have
Yes.
arrived.
Just that burden lifted.
Yes, yes, it seriously lifted. And then we started getting an influx of things coming in and stuff that actually aligns with us better. And yeah, now I'm really excited. Like it took a while to get there and to say no and to make the decision, but once we made peace with it and remembered why we're doing what we're doing, then it just opens up the realm for so many things, so many good things.
Mhm.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I know. I loved seeing like being a part of that journey with Valerie and hearing her speak about just being like, we're gonna close down the coffee shop, and I watch and feeling like, you were like, oh, like trying to just not feel like what society wants, what society kind of always tells us, like, oh, if you're closing something down, it didn't work out or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Like, actually, you were just stepping into your own power and like your own authority and saying, actually, it's not a goodbye. I'm still here. I'm just pivoting. And
Mhm.
now you'll get all these opportunities because I've seen them. I think for me, my life with entrepreneurship has been very interesting because I started in my entrepreneurial world in my late 30s and I had a lot of kids really young. And so I focused a lot of my early 20s and 30s and things like that, like trying to get education. And then also, oh, now I'm pregnant, and oh, now I'm pregnant again. And oh, here comes another one. But I've always wanted to work. I've always wanted to do things. And I think when I decided to jump into spirituality, that's where everything kind of started to come out. But as you both know, I was also doing real estate while I was in this, like, trying to be a mom and raise the kids and all the things. So I wanted to see if I can bring that into my space and change the way we looked at real estate and buying a home and infuse that into my business. And then about a year of really busting my butt, I realized that no, as much as I like it, I don't love it. As much as it brings me joy, it doesn't bring me the joy every day that I want. And it doesn't give me that satisfaction like joy, or like India, you said like your word is joy, and you had a friend who brought up love.
Mhm.
My word is about soul. And I was like, I ain't changing anybody's soul with just buying a house right now. And it doesn't allow me to bring the soul into a space. And it just felt like I was going a little bit up the wrong path in a sense. And it was taking me away from the things that actually do make me excited. And so, yeah, I pivoted, especially around the election of Donald Trump. I was like, Yeah, no, my work is needed and it's needed to support and help women and support and here to help them collectively thrive and rise. And a lot of these things, like as we've progressed up until this point from election time to here, there's programs that are being taken away that are all about mental health and spirituality and women. We're going to be affected a lot. And I can see the writing on the wall ahead of everybody else. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to let this go. And as much as hard it was for me to feel like, oh, here's something that people are watching me, like, oh, there she goes again, letting something else go, and oh, she's gonna pick up something else. Like, whatever. Because at this point, I'm in my life and in my age where I'm in my early mid 40s at this point. Like, who cares? What matters is that I'm present as a mom and I'm happy when my kids come home. And if they see me working, they see a mom that's happy and who's changing the environment, who's changing the world, who's making the world a better place versus a mom who's tired and has to post on Instagram all the time and take them on the weekends and be away on the weekends to do open houses. Like that's fine for, people who genuinely love real estate and want to do that. But I had cultivated something special with the spirituality, working in that and that being a big base of my business. So when I let that go, I got more opportunities to do speaking engagements. I got more opportunities to work with small businesses. Like I just did a sound bath for a small veterinarian group who wanted to give their employees a joy break. So
Nice.
been like really, and it felt like a big thing got lifted, and energetically it just felt like, whew, okay, like I'm putting myself first. I'm putting the things that I want to do, and I'm putting myself in the first that I'm not going to doubt it anymore. And whatever is going to blow my way is going to come easy to me. And I'm just going to trust that I want to put my energy into things that truly make me happy and that change the world and make the world a more spiritually aligned place. So,
I love it.
thank
I
you.
love it. And I love what you both have shared because really, I think for business owners, it's about redefining success and recognizing that part of that, our definition of success has to include the joy that we cultivate and not just the joy that we cultivate for other folk. Because sometimes we're so client focused or customer focused and we're not thinking about the joy that we cultivate for ourselves. And so much of the work that I do is with organizations thinking about and small teams. I've worked with some small business owners that have small teams and the joyful workplace cultures that they're cultivating. But the thing that makes me the happiest that I'm really looking forward to lean into is working with small business owners because when we start to change our mind about how we approach our work and that joyful no, and redefining our success by the joy we cultivate and not the hustle and the grind and all of that, it can just shift so much. It's such a powerful way of kind of being and existing. And like what both of you said, it allows us to like reconnect to that vision, the vision that started, our work in the first place.
I love that. I think sometimes, I mean, I guess speaking to the entrepreneurs listening or those who want to be, sometimes you could forget your vision. You're like, wait,
Yeah.
what was I doing? What was this all about again? And I'm sure everybody who sat down and write their vision and mission statement probably was writing it from a place of joy at that time.
And freedom, like, right? Like when I was doing my work, like I wanted control of my time. Like freedom of time was super important to me. And then you get into it and you're like, shit, I have no time. Like, how am I working more? It's like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and you're like, oh, I need to do this thing. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it helps us to reorient and to realize the ways that we've been showing up that are not at all aligned with that initial vision.
I feel like I could talk to you forever. Do you have anything else to add, Valerie?
I just want to, because in our stories, in like all three of our stories in our entrepreneurial path, one thing that has been a common factor, I think, is community. And like we've all been able to like lean on each other and help each other through those times where we weren't able to have those joyful breaks, but we're just like in the hustle, or, we have to get ready to make that joyful no. And maybe we're not ready, but we've got our village of people behind us helping us get to that no. So what is like some kind of advice or like, or what has community meant to you for people who maybe are lacking the aligned support systems in either in business or life, wherever they are?
That question is so funny. It makes me think of my grandfather, who is like very Southern, very Baptist, right? And I remember I was about to make this big transition in my life and I was going to move away from home. So this is when I was much younger. And he said, well, and this is how he talks, it's like real slow and intentional. He said, well, India, now, if you show yourself friendly, you'll make friends. And it was so like a matter of fact. Like, like he just said this big profound thing. And I'm like, okay, but it is something that has stuck with me. And I share that because even when I don't want to, right? Because I used to think that I was an extrovert, and then I realized, baby, you are not an extrovert, right? Like I'm somewhere in the middle and I need to come home and be quiet and sit down.
Right.
Even when I don't want to, those moments when I show up and I show myself friendly, as he would say, I have been able to make some just amazing connections with folks. And I think those things have helped and sustained me, especially when it comes to business ownership. Because I didn't have a blueprint for this. Like, I'm just out here making my own way of figuring out what it looks like with selling the business. I had no clue what I was doing. I just know it needed to be sold. And so I think the community piece of it is so important for business owners, especially solo business owners, because you need conversation partners. You need someone that's going to be honest with you too, right? So not just like showing up at this little like fluffy networking thing and people are like, "Oh my God, you're doing great." I need someone to be like, "Girl, you have not posted in 3 months. Do something," right? Like, who can be real clear with me about where I need to get it together. That has been so helpful. And I don't know where I would be. And even in meeting you all just randomly through a different kind of a group for business owners or for entrepreneurs. And then it from the very beginning, right? Like I feel like we've gone through like various iterations of like shifting and evolving, and it's always since that moment been us as part of that core group, and that has been so beautiful to see other people's journey, like to see y'all's journey, for y'all to have been there with me through all of it, like the closing of Moxie, through the selling of the picnic company, through the ways that we change. Like, I think it's like one of the best relationships, right? And it's something that we need to nurture and take serious as business owners.
Yeah, I agree. My husband's like, you guys are so cute. Whenever he sees us all together, he's like, I'm jealous. I want friends like that. Or
Oh,
that you can really like get serious with and hold each other accountable, but also like laugh and have like the best time. It's like he's like that's like unconditional love that you guys have. And he saw it since, we've all gathered together all the time throughout these years. So I think like taking joy breaks with some friends around is great.
Yes, yes.
I love that. So as we wrap up this call, or not this call, but this podcast with you, what are ways that people can connect with you? Do you have anything coming up in the summer season that you're going to be working on that they can support you? How can they work with you or collaborate with you?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, you can always bring me in to speak, do workshops with your teams. If you yourself kind of like run a group for entrepreneurs, I'm always down to host workshops for entrepreneurs. Like, it's something that is really meaningful to me. Folks can connect with me on Instagram at underscore the Joy Ambassador. They can follow the Joy Collective on, I mean, not the Joy Collective. See, now I'm getting both of the businesses mixed up. The Joy Collaborative on LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn under my name. definitely kind of connect in all of those spaces. In the summer, I'm hoping to put together something like some little, I don't know what it's gonna be. Like, I don't want to call it a workshop, but some energetic thing around the joyful no, because it's been so powerful for me. So wanting to do something and cultivating something around that. I've also been talking to another business owner whose work focuses on moms and thinking about putting something together for business owners who are moms because this shit is wild. It is a wild and crazy time. So something
Yeah.
in that regard. But yeah, I mean, people connect with me, sign up for my newsletter, the Joy Break, get lots of tips, find out what's going on.
Cool. Yay. That's exciting. Well, we thank you for your time and we thank you for actually giving us this power of saying no. I think that's
Mhm.
like something we all need to be reminded of every single day because I'm a people pleaser. And that's like one of those things where I've like stepped into that power, I would say, in the past 3 years of saying no and finding the joy in that. And like, and it's okay. It's okay to say no.
Yeah. Well, thanks, y'all. This has been great.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, India.
We will link all of India's information below so you can find it. And yeah, go give her a follow on Instagram and all her social media. Check out her website and especially her newsletter because I'm sure you're going to be given some good tidbits. And I know you have a quiz that you're working on. So that
Yeah.
one will be really fun. That one will be
Yes, so I have a quiz that folks can take that's about figuring out how joyful their workplace is, and then gives you some tips on the other hand of what you can do to cultivate more joy within your teams. So go
Mm,
take that too. You can find that on my website, thejoycollaborative.com.
I love that. And one thing for our listeners to take away today is to choose joy now.
Yeah.
yes. Choose joy now. All right. Thank you all for listening.
Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Espiritu Coffee Chats.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation and found a little inspiration to take with you.
If you loved what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform.
And stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind the scenes content, and more.
Until next time, keep the spirit alive and the coffee brewing. Cheers!